Hi there, I'm Dr. Louise Mahler, and this is my 12:30 analysis session on a Thursday. Now, if you haven't heard enough about the American election already, well, here's my analysis. Now, I admire the Americans tremendously. When you work with Americans, they present in a brilliant way. But something went dramatically wrong here with the debate. I've actually called it dire. Why do I say dire? Because it's a good way to remember it. It was disrespectful. It was interruptive, if there's such a word, and it was abusive. What happened? The debate was set up with 6 different sections, and within each of those, there was supposed to be 2 minutes for each of the participants to speak, and then a couple of minutes of debate. That isn't what happened. In fact, what happened was that there was no answering of questions, no content, and as I said, it was disrespectful, interrupting. Everyone was interrupting each other, and it was abusive. So we had on the one hand Trump, in summary, who really clearly showed a total disrespect for the debate process, for his opponent, and for the moderator. And then we had Biden, on the other hand, who was really trying hard to hold it together, but didn't quite manage, just didn't have what you call that gravitas you would expect from an American leader, and even sunk to the level of saying, shut up, this clown, and keep yapping, man. None of that really works at all. So let's look at Trump, first of all. Look, this was toned down Trump from his normal bodily displays of his rallies. You know, normally he's reeling and turning the body and gesturing and holding his arms out wide. None of that happened. He actually held on to the lectern. I mean, he did his usual wriggling to say, I'm right, I'm right. And he did his strong face, but he just used a strength, and that strength came out in his voice and his approach. There was no reining him in. He just blurted out whatever he wanted to. For instance, when the moderator, Chris Wallace, said, I would like to, let me have a look. Didn't Biden tell the president to shut up? Yes, there was Biden told the president to shut up. That's who said shut up. Did I say that the other way around? No. So he spoke. For instance, when the moderator said to him, I'd like to talk about climate change, Trump said, yes, so would I. I don't think I've heard a response like that since about grade 3. It was very childish, and just blurting out, taking control of the floor. Of course, he uses a lot of superlatives in his language that keep him speaking. So in his very first sentence, he said very simply, top, good in every way, fantastic, outstanding, single greatest. That was in his first sentence. And it carries on like that, and it's captivating, I have to say. And then he uses what are called universal quantifiers. That's when there's no middleman. There's no, or sometimes people say, or some people say, no, it's everybody, nobody. Everybody. For instance, when he was talking about Biden, he was saying, not that you didn't do badly and you did badly in your class at university. No, he said you were the very lowest in your class. These are captivating manipulations, and that's what he uses. He did pointing, he did disrespect in his gestures by gesturing towards Biden, but looking at Chris Wallace. He did his karate chops out there, and they were his 2 of his major gestures. He also spoke about something at one stage where he put 2 hands down, and pointed down, disrespect in every way. For his memory techniques, Trump doesn't really have memory techniques. He just bounces in the moment. He responds to audience. He responds to the situation. it's just open mouth, blurting out. And it seemed to have no control whatsoever. Trump supporters love it. It shows huge strength of person in that he has no fear whatsoever. Nothing will stop him. No respect for the system or the moderator was what was quite unusual. We expected it towards Biden. We didn't expect it towards the moderator or the rules of the debate. When it came to Biden, he was trying to stand firm and show bodily strength. And he did that really well. He held on to the lectern, and his strength is that he didn't address Trump on that side either. He actually addressed straight ahead to the camera. He put his hand out and he gestured like this straight to the camera. Are you at home with someone not at your breakfast table because they've died of COVID? Are you this person? Are you need to vote? And he was told, go down the screen and project to the American people. The problem with that was that he was so easily distracted. He'd be going down his path, Trump would be speaking to him, and then he'd lose his track. Once he'd lost his track, he doesn't seem to be able to get it back. And I do think that there is an issue with age. I really do. I noticed his memory technique where he always goes 1, 2, 3, or the first thing, the second thing, 1, and Trump even made fun of him at one stage for doing that and said, no, you were up to number 2. He does that with his numbers. He also, when he has a memorized answer, he will create a list and then go through it. So for instance, why should we vote for you? His answer was, because under this president, we are weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, more violent. He had 5 things, and then he goes through each. Why are we weaker? We're weaker because of Putin. And why are we sicker? Because he got through a couple of those. Trump interrupted him, and he was gone, and he never got to the end. So, they were his memory techniques, but even then he can't hold it and come back. I'd like to say that I was responding there to somebody's comment at the side, and I was able to come back to where I was. And I was even thinking at the time, great, okay, where was I? Come back. I think as you get older, that gets harder and harder. And I think that Biden has lost that skill. Not that he's not a marvelous man of experience. One of the things is that when he makes these big statements, his biggest weakness, Biden, is his voice. So he made several big statements. He said, we can defeat racism in America, but he says it in such a weak way. He said, wrong man, wrong place, wrong time. Again, nobody heard it. He kept saying he has no plan. But nobody heard it. Nobody repeated those phrases because he says them in a way that lacks gravitas. Nobody hears it. He often diminishes at the end of his sentence. He'll say, and he has no plan. And he doesn't finish the complete sentence. The other thing is that, and I believe that he stuttered as a child, but this stuttering today weakens him. And I think there was a period of his life when he didn't do it. But when he was talking about the rainforests and how we should not allow them to be torn down, he said we need to give them $20 billion and stop them tearing down the forest. But he didn't say that. He said we need to give them $20 billion and stop them tearing down the forest. Can you see how that totally weakens what he has to say? Now, I also have eyes in the back of my head when it comes to voice. And what I noticed was something quite worrying, which is that when he speaks, somehow the nerve is not coming through to his mouth. So he's shaping his mouth in a way that doesn't match the word he's going to say, and then has difficulty. Now, there's a name for this. I think it's called dysarthria. And he will say, we need to run. Maybe he wants to say that, but he'll say, we need to run, one. And especially with ours, he had that difficulty. This is very unusual and quite off-putting once you become aware of it. The other thing you might not have noticed was that his jaw would hang when the camera went off him and moved to Trump. Biden, he kept moving his jaw as though he was still speaking, but he wasn't still speaking. What is that about? That's what old people do. I probably do it. Let's see what the comments are. An interesting observation, lots to learn watching this. And that's interesting, Phoebe, because this is why we watch. I'm not criticizing these people. They're clearly brilliant. They're the most powerful people in the world, but they get it wrong as well. And why? I analyze this so we can see, why is it appealing or not appealing to us? Why does one person win and the other person doesn't win? The other thing I'd like to draw attention to is the deflection of answers. Now, you find this in the building industry. People learn this type of response where we don't answer a question, we deflect back to the person who asked it. So, for instance, if I were in the building industry and somebody came to me and said, why isn't the building finished? Instead of going, because this, no, we go, well, if you'd given me the plans a little earlier, maybe it would be finished. So I deflect back to the person who's there. And this is what they do all the time. Biden did it, but Trump did it really strongly. So on the question, will you denounce white supremacists? He actually said someone has to do something about Antifa and the left. That's not an answer to the question. You have to do something about Antifa and the left was not an answer to the question that he was asked. And that doesn't get picked up. And what fascinated me was that along the bottom of the screen when he said that was printed, Trump says someone has to do something about Antifa and the left. And I thought, hang on, that shouldn't be printed. We should not reward him for not answering the question. And then on another one, it says, when they said that the voting maybe won't decide it straight away, it may take some weeks, they said, will you promote calmness amongst your supporters? And he said, bad things happen in Philadelphia. They cheat. Again, they cheat. Bad things. What is he going to do? We asked him what he was going to do about it. Never got an answer to that. Someone's saying Biden, I'm saying Biden, his vitality has diminished. That's for sure. Is it still there enough for him to be president? Well, that's my next question. In leadership, what do I think of their leadership? Well, it's a Geschmackssache. That's a German phrase for it's a matter of taste when you have these pure forms of leadership. Trump is the old school bully, talk over the top. If you think this doesn't exist, I hear stories on boards where people are on boards and they have people on their board who, in the virtual environment, have not spoken for months. And they haven't questioned that. They haven't said, I haven't heard anyone else's voice for months. Hello, we have to realize that voices and diverse voices need to be heard. Bullies don't. And this is a classic Trump. It is seen as power, but is it the right kind of power? It's the old school. Biden, on the other hand, loves storytelling, expressing empathy, but he's lacking some power. And I'm reminded of the Three Little Bears, this bed's too hard, this bed's too soft. We need more of both in each other. I'm not happy with either of their forms of leadership, quite frankly. So who do I think? Any questions from anybody? No. Who do I think won the election? I looked at the screen and I asked myself the question, who do I think won this election? And I had a little thought about that. And my thought was, Chris Wallace was the one I wanted to be president. Chris Wallace, neither of them. And Chris Wallace was the moderator. Who do I think lost? I think the American people lost. I think this was an international catastrophe to watch this. And as Helen Reddy died yesterday, I'd like to say perhaps men are too emotional for politics. Thank you, Helen. Woman, hear me roar. That's just a little joke, team, not to turn anybody off. So the debate was awful. It was sad to watch. And Personally, I don't know they'll have the other debates. I think it will be it was such a problem that they may not have the other debates. If they did have the other debates, then I would advise Biden to hold his ground, not to be distracted by Trump, but to hold his ground. And I would advise Trump to have some content, just some content, and not to constantly interrupt, because it was very undermining. Chris was a little lost too, somebody said, piggy in the middle. He did handle it with some strength. I thought he could have handled it with more strength, quite frankly. I think he needed to stand up and say, stop, this has to end. That, however, is a very difficult call in the moment when you're dealing with the two most powerful men in the world, who would have wanted to have been in that situation. Not me. So we can all be glad that it's not us up there on stage, because it's a really tricky situation. They are the two most powerful men in the world, but it is fascinating to watch, fascinating to analyze. And thank you very much for listening. Thank you.